Chess is a young man's game, and this perception has been formed because of some great players like Carlsen, Caruana, Wesley So, Anish Giri, who are all in their 20s. But this perception can change. If it has to be done, it has to be done by a legend. And there's only one guy who can do it, and that's Vishy Anand, the Madras Tiger. On 27th of December, in the 9th round of World Rapid Championship 2017, Anand was up against Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. Many of the people all over the world have said that Anand should now, retire. He's past his prime. But Anand believes that as long as he enjoys chess, he should continue playing. Well, after a dismal performance in London Chess Classic, not much was expected of him at the World Rapid Championship, but he is surprising one and all. Currently, he is in the joint second place, 7.5 out of 10. So let's have a look at this game between Carlsen and Anand. Magnus begins with 1d4 and Anand opts for the Nimzo Indian e3 variation, and here we see a small unusual move by Magnus. He goes for a3. More common are the knight jumps to f3 or e2. With a3, what usually black would do is he takes, and now he has the additional option to take on c4. So if you were to play a move like c5, then after cd, ed, you go into a very well-known position, the famous Botvinnik Capablanca structure of 1938. But because white has not taken on d5, black can do that and then play c5, and this is what Anand would like to do. He will put his queen on c7 and try to pressurize these small weaknesses on c4 and c3. Knight f3, queen c7, bishop went back to e2, b6. All logical moves, bishop b7, castle, knight b7. I like white's black's harmonious development. You can see these knights wonderfully placed, bishop down the long diagonal. But what is missing is the dark squared bishop, and because of that, white has a small edge as he is able to play the move c4, and this is a nice move. Magnus would like to at some point either take on c5 or push ahead with d5 and get this bishop going. That's the pride in his position. Rook c8, rook c1, and rook fd8. What I have seen in Anand's game, and I think you all must have as well, is that he likes to play in classical fashion. He likes to get his pieces to the central squares, and you would hardly see him playing some unusual openings with moves like getting his knight to the side of the board or bishops developing on unusual squares, because he truly believes in this, and you can see him playing his best chess over there. All his pieces are developed, and now he goes for a nice idea, knight to g4, and this is very typical. You cannot play h3 over here to kick the knight because of bishop into f3, and then the queen would jump in and deliver a mate on h2. So white has to weaken the long diagonal with g3 because bishop into f3 is a threat, and this move is actually what causes white's downfall in the game. You will see at the end that this diagonal is where Magnus gets checkmated. So knight g4, I would say, is a very critical move. Anand goes back after creating the weakness, and after rook fd1 he jumps into e4. Now Carlsen could just play d5 here, and I think it was possible, but maybe he was afraid of ed cd knight f6 when the d5 pawn would be slightly weak. So he first went knight e1, and maybe at some point he would like to get his knight to d3 to f4 or from g2 to f4, and also he keeps the options open of playing f3 and at the right moment push the knight back. Of course, after knight d6 was played, I think knight df6 was more in the spirit of the position, because white can anyway not play f3 as it is met with knight into g3 sack. So knight d6 is not such a good move by Anand, and it allows Magnus to get this move d5 in, and this is a dangerous pawn. But more than the pawn, what I am afraid of is this guy here. He is breathing fire in the position, so I would say Magnus is already slightly better. And here c4 by Anand, he's trying to get his queen side pawns rolling, but queen c2 b5, and I think bg4 was an interesting move. You know, you're probing this diagonal over here. The knight on d7 doesn't feel so comfortable. Something like rook e8, queen c3, f6, and you know, you have this bishop e6 check at some point. So I was already preferring white's position here, but Magnus went knight g2, not a bad move. Knight c5, knight f4, and here queen e7 was played by Anand, still trying to keep control. So it's like black has his trumps on the queen side, but he has to make sure that nothing really dangerous happens on the king side. If that is taken care of, he would be okay. Bishop g4, rook c7, and after queen c3, now Anand slowly starts to take over with the move first f5. Bishop goes back, rook c d7. Again, getting his pieces to good squares. Queen b4, and now starts this tactical sequence with knight b3. I think Magnus should have saved his exchange with the move rook c2, and the position is roundabout even, but he went for tactics with knight e6. I don't know what he missed, because knight c1, and he had to take back the knight on c1, because if he played knight into d8, then black has this nice move knight a2 attacking the queen, and when the queen moves back, you take, and the knight is trapped on a2, but after a6, queen a2, knight e4, black has complete control, and d5 pawn will fall soon. So when black took on c1, white had to take it back, and after knight c8, which was played by Anand, he could have even played a5 possible, because queen a5 is met with rook a8, but he decided to go knight c8, and after queen into b5, which was some sort of an error, you could just take on d8, queen b4, a b4, rook d8, rook d1, and the position is, well, it's unclear. I would say black is doing perfectly fine, because he can put his knight to d6, but still it's not so clear. In the game, when Magnus took on b5, Vishy had this nice counter exchange sacrifice prepared by taking on d5, and after bishop d5, rook d5 was played. So now the knight on e6 is hanging. Magnus had this queen b4 in mind, because if you take queen e6, queen b7 is hanging, but Vishy played knight d6, and you can see how Anand is maintaining the balance through very tricky moves, and this is what I like about him very much in this game. And usually it's Anand who blunders, but this time it's Magnus who made the huge blunder. Knight c5, knight f4 would have kept the game very complicated, and anything could have happened, but after knight c5, it's all over. And here's your chance to play like Anand. Try to think, how does black win? The win is very nice, very clean, but at the same time easy to miss in a rapid game. So I'm sure you spotted the move rook into c5, good move, and then queen e4, threatening a mate on g2. The king has to start running to f1. In fact, Magnus resigned here, but I'll just show you how the game would have ended if they played on bishop f3. King d2 is forced, and there you have the knight fork. So king c2 will be met with take, and knight c5, and you're a piece up. So beautiful game by Anand, beating Magnus Carlsen. Well, you say that he's truly a timeless phenomenon. And as just an additional extra bit for you, I'll show you this end of the game, McShane Anand, in which in this position McShane made the move queen f4, Anand went back with his queen to e6, and now anything like say knight e3 would have been fine, but McShane went for the move queen f3, and did you spot it? Black to play and win. Of course, McShane was kind enough to let Anand mate him, and that was a nice mate. So Vishy is doing really well. He's currently in the second position, so follow his games today. I hope that he becomes the world rapid champion.